Okie dokie, so good morning, welcome to today's video. I've got a bit of a slightly different one this week, so I'm going to be meeting one of our group members from the Facebook group 40 something riders, also known as FSR MTB. I'm going to put the link in the description below so you can check us out. We are an awesome group, we do loads of group rides, we are very friendly in every way we can possibly be, so join in, come and meet us all. We do lots of group rides, as I say, so we welcome everybody to come and try it out and yeah, join in the fun. So today our fun is all about fitness. So I've got a guest who I'm going to introduce you to in a moment. His name is Paul, Coach Paul to be exact. He's part of the 40 something riders group and he is an expert in fitness. I'm going to get some really good tips from him, and I think it's going to probably benefit many of you guys as well. So let's go and meet Paul. Okay, so I'd like to introduce you to my good buddy Paul.
Hi.
We have got a very new relationship over the 40 something riders group, but I respect this guy so much. He's got so much knowledge and expertise, and we're going to dip into that exact thing right now. So Paul, give us a bit of a brief about you and your background.
Okay, so my background actually is over a decade in science education, but always had quite a strong interest in fitness, and recently qualified as a personal trainer after kind of pursuing my interest in fitness in parallel with my teaching career, and I'm sort of transitioning over into personal training as more of a full-time role. Awesome. And are you kind of aiming at mountain bike as a part of what you're doing? Yeah, so I think there are a lot of people out there starting to offer advice to mountain bikers, and I still feel that it's a sport where fitness advice is still kind of sneered at a little bit, but you know, I've turned 40 recently. I have to pay attention to thank you very much. And I have to pay attention to these things, and a little bit of maintenance, even for the 20-year-old rider, means that when they are 40, they can still feel more like they are 20.
For sure, I totally agree. Yeah. Well, shall we have a look at a little bit of what you're about to offer?
Sure. Then? Yeah. Nice so one. Yeah, I was just going to take us through some dynamic stretches.
Excellent.
Before riding. Cool, let's go. Okay folks, so what I want to take you through today are just a handful of what we call dynamic stretches that are just going to take a couple of minutes and will just help you ease into a ride a little bit more easily, make that first climb a little bit less of a shock to the system, and should also help improve performance over the duration of a ride. It's just going to take 2 minutes because, let's be honest, when you're all in the car park, nobody wants to spend 10-15 minutes going through a whole battery of yoga positions before doing a ride. Okay, so first stretch that I want to show you is going to be a squat to stand. So you're going to stand up tall, and then you are going to reach down for your toes. You do not have to do this with locked out legs. You can put a slight bend in your legs as you do this. Bending down, grabbing the toes, and then pulling yourself into a squat position, and then standing up tall again. Again, you don't have to go with the straight leg. You can have soft knees, as we call it, for that. Okay, so 5 of those. Crunch of my knee. So 5 of those. Okay, next thing we want to do. Now this is not ideal. Sometimes you're going to be in a wet car park, but if you're in a position, especially if you've got knee pads on, to take a knee, then we're going to warm up hip flexors and ankles. I get really obsessed about ankle mobility. I think it's incredibly important for the mountain biker. So, hip flexors, going to drop down. You're going to squeeze the glute of your trailing leg, and you're going to pulse forward 5 times. Then with a rotation over the leading knee. Okay, and then I'm going to reach up and over as you do the same. Next, I'm going to rock the ankle forward. Keep that heel on the floor.
Yeah, amazing. That's your police job there as well, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, Euro contact.
5 of those. And then, while you're in this position, you can flop that forward. And you're going to reach down to the inside of your foot, like this. Okay, do not hold any of these stretches. Just in and out of the stretches for a few seconds. Then you can repeat the same on the other side. Okay, right. Next movement is we're going to do a side lunge. Again, toes pointing forward. You're going to take a big step out to the side. Make sure that the toes are still pointing forward. And then you're going to drop down. Make sure you're pushing your bum back. Just go down as far as is comfortable. And you're going to do 10 of those. You should feel a stretch on the inside of your thigh here. Okay. Again, if it hurts, don't do it. Okay, once you've done those, make sure you repeat it with the other side as well, but it's going to look exactly the same. Okay, and then just a couple more movements. Let's get some of the upper body warmed up around the shoulders and around the chest and the upper back. So these are just windmills. So again, nice wide stance. I'm going to have to pull my shorts up here. And then you're going to reach down dynamically like this, and then do the same on this side. So 10 per side. And then this one might give you a little bit of a throwback of PE lessons, but it's going to be dynamic arm swings like that. I'm going to do 5 backwards, 5 forwards. Okay, and then across the chest. 10 of those. Okay, by which point you should be feeling nicely loosened up. What this means is that when you jump on the bike, if you come across a technical feature early on in the trail, then you should be nice and loosened up around the hips and the shoulders to be able to get into those positions that sometimes the trail decides that you need to be able to get into. Okay, so in an ideal world, you would already have pedaled for a few minutes to get your body temperature up, get your joints and ligaments and tendons all up to temperature before doing these dynamic stretches. I appreciate that's not always possible. Sometimes you rock up at the car park and you've got a few minutes before people are going to set off on the ride. We've managed to cycle up to this hill from Pease Lake, and so we're nice and warm before limbering up, before doing the descents. But I appreciate it's better to do these having not fully warmed up by riding than not doing them at all.
Awesome, Paul. I'm joining in with all of this as well, so I feel so much more limber up and ready to go. Just buzzing now. Not anywhere near as tight as I did before. So
fantastic,
absolutely awesome. Thank
Cheers,
you very
Phil.
much.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolute pleasure.
Cheers.
Oh, that's one soggy foot. Oh, soggy. That's like a blooming swimming pool. Oh. Whoa, nearly off the edge.
Okay, folks, am I in shot? Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. I often find that when I've been for a ride somewhere and I've got a bit of a drive back home, then I can get quite stiff in the car afterwards. So it's often a good idea to just have a bit of a stretch off before you jump in the car, and then you are immobilized for several hours. I certainly find that I get quite stiff around my knees, my hips, and even my lower back. So we're just going to look at a few stretches that you're going to move into and hold for about 30 seconds, and they should make that drive home a little bit more bearable.
Go for it.
Okay, so first stretch is for your hip flexors, which are basically the muscles that we'd find down the front of our thighs. These are going to get tight while riding because you never really, when riding a bike, fully extend through that joint. And then you jump in a car and you do the same. So it's a good idea to stretch these regularly. So here's what you do. You take a half kneeling position, and a really useful cue here is to think about squeezing this glute of the trailing leg. Okay, and then you basically push your hips forward while still squeezing that glute. If it helps, put a hand on that glute so that you can actually feel the contraction in there, and you should feel a fairly deep stretch coming down through the front of this thigh that's on the ground. Okay, you're going to hold that one for 30 seconds. Okay, so some of these stretches, they're kind of adaptations because we're in the woods. There's a soggy car park over there, so we have to find ways of doing these where we can't get on the floor. So I'm wanting to stretch my adductors, which are the muscles on the inside of my thighs here. So I'm going to take a nice wide stance, make sure your toes are pointing forward, hike up your britches, okay, and then push your bum back and just reach down for the floor. You do not want to be rounding with your lower back. You should feel pretty nice deep stretch here on the inside of your thighs. Okay, just relax into it. Don't forget to breathe. Every time you breathe out, try and move deeper into the stretch. Again, 30 seconds is fine. Okay, next stretch that we're going to have a look at is because you spend a lot of time sort of what we call internally rotated while holding onto the handlebars. So it's a nice thing to do for your shoulder joint to find a way of opening up there. So it's called a doorway pec stretch. So I'm just going to plant my forearm against the tree there, and I'm going to just push gently while turning away from the tree, and you should feel a stretch a bit through the bicep and into the pec here. It should feel pretty pleasant, really. Again, relax into it, don't forget to breathe. As you breathe out, let yourself just ease into the stretch more. 30 seconds on each side. Oh, just got carried away doing the stretch. Just going to do that one as well, just to balance it out. Oh. Okay folks, next stretch we're going to do is for your glutes. Okay, this is a slightly more technical one. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to get your foot here, you're going to place it on the top of your thigh like that. So your leg should be out at the side like this. I've got my hand on this tree to support myself, and then I'm going to sit back, and you should feel quite a strong stretch in the meat of your glute around here. Okay, again, just hold it for 30 seconds, breathing into the stretch. Every time you breathe out, let your body relax more into that stretch position. Next stretch for your quads. Okay, so again, I like to have a tree nearby, but if you've got superior balance, maybe you don't need to. Just gonna reach around, grab your foot nearer the ankle. Don't really haul on your knee here. Again, just enough to feel a nice stretch, and keeping your legs pretty close to each other. Don't want to see this, much more like this. Again, just let a gentle stretch occur. It shouldn't hurt. Hold it for 30 seconds. Hamstrings. So, super simple one. You're going to take a slightly staggered stance, so one knee in front, and you're just going to push down gently on there. Don't round your lower back, push your bum back. You should feel a stretch here. in the belly of the hamstring. Again, 30 seconds. Relaxing into the stretch. Okay, final stretch, calves. Again, I've got the tree to lean against here. What we're going to do is this is the calf that we're stretching. Keep your heel flat on the floor, and you're just going to lean forward, lunging forward until you feel deep stretch in your calf muscle there. Hold that one for 30 seconds. Okay, so just want to talk about 3 basic nutrition principles that come up again and again when I talk to mountain bikers. So a lot of mountain bikers want to know what to eat, but they end up ignoring how much to eat. And so something that I've come across when speaking to people is that they are bollocks. Something that I've noticed when talking to mountain bikers is that they can view healthy eating with a certain degree of disdain. They say that they've tried it, it didn't work for them, and they just want to go back to eating how they used to eat. And I can absolutely understand why. I know plenty of riders who have pretty basic diets, a lot of processed food, not many vegetables, and they're functioning okay. They're not amazing athletes, they're certainly not at the front of the pack, but they basically work. And when they've tried to eat more healthily, and let's say their traditional breakfast is a trip to Subway or a trip to Greg's, and they're taking in the best part of 800, 1,000 calories before a ride, then when they try and eat healthily and they have a bowl of porridge and they switch to low-fat food sources, then what's happened is that they've immediately slashed their calorie intake by more than half. And then they go out and they try to do another big ride and they bonk. Their glycogen levels, which is basically the stored form of carbohydrate in your body's muscles, run out much more quickly because they've not been topped up before the ride, and they have a really bad experience. And they say, healthy eating doesn't work for me. So what you eat is absolutely important, but how much you eat matters just as much.
So, what would you suggest, Paul, from the point of view of preparing the night before for a meal for a ride the next day?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Phil. So it definitely depends how big the ride is. If you're going to go and do, just a little 10-kilometer loop, then you probably don't need to do anything special. On the flip side, if you're preparing for like some monstrous 50-kilometer loop in the lakes, which is going to be an 8-hour outing with 5,000-6,000 feet of climbing, then it's probably a good idea to actually take on board a little bit more fuel in the evening than you normally would. I like fairly low-fat carbohydrate sources, rice, pasta, potatoes, certainly white potatoes. It's very difficult to eat a lot of carbohydrate from white potatoes, so be aware of that. But rice and pasta, lean protein, nothing that's too fatty, nothing that's going to digest too slowly and sit on you really heavily in the morning. And don't forget your fruits and veggies as well. I think all of those can be part of it.
Awesome. I'm getting hungry already.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've discussed what we have to eat before, or the day before the ride. What about the day of the ride? What about breakfast? What would you suggest there?
Yeah, so this depends how soon you're going to eat your breakfast before you're kind of pedaling. So if you've got an hour and a half, a couple of hours before you're really going to be hitting the trails, then you can eat things that are sort of moderately high in fiber, so some sort of mueslis, oatmeal, so porridge, things like that, wholemeal toast, various fruits. I love bananas, apples, things like that are also great. And you also want to make sure that you get some sort of protein in there. For breakfast protein, I'm a big fan of eggs. They're a great choice. Huge fan of low-fat Greek yogurt. That's quite a slow digesting protein, and even using protein powders and things like that. I know some people think, oh, isn't that for bodybuilders? But really, it's just a convenience food, and there's really no harm in using protein powders. They're super useful from a cost per serving point of view as well. So, Phil, I did just want to add though, if you're about to sort of hit the trails really soon in the morning and you've really not got a lot of time to digest that food, then you want to go for food sources that are more rapidly digesting. So this is where things like sports drinks do come into play. Bananas also, your body can digest those relatively quickly. So, you know, if you are the kind of person who wants to get up and be on the bike within 15 minutes, then have a coffee, have a couple of bananas, have some Lucozade on the bike with you, and get a whey protein shake in your system as well. That way you've got some carbohydrate in your system really quickly, you've got some amino acids circulating in your system really quickly, and caffeine before a ride is also a really good idea as well. It has been shown in so many studies to improve performance.
I tend to agree with that in a massive way.
Absolutely,
as a coffee
it's super
lover.
useful, yeah.
Awesome.
Just be aware that, you know, caffeine does have a downside. If you're riding later in the day, try and stay away from caffeine. I'd say 6 to 10 hours before bedtime, and also it has been linked with increased anxiety. So if that's something that you're aware of and you have that sensitivity to caffeine there, then again, moderate your intake.
Cracking advice, thank you very much. So another question for you, Paul, then. During a ride, what would you recommend for maintaining strength, concentration, that kind of thing, and energy, of course?
Yeah, so I think something that a lot of people miss out on is electrolyte tablets. I'm a big fan of these. From the very first time that I got super horrific cramp while riding in Scotland as a much younger rider, I was quickly a convert to using electrolyte tablets. So mainly sodium, there's a little bit of potassium in there as well. I mean, you could just add some table salt to your water and things like that, but if you get the quantities wrong, then it's going to taste absolutely horrific and also could be quite bad for you. So it's best if you buy the pre-made effervescent tablets. You can get them at Tesco, you can buy them from online cycle retailers.
Smooth.
Yeah. And you just drop them in your water. They tell you how much water to dilute them with, and they make your water taste fantastic, which encourages you to drink more water, because I know from experience when I'm out riding as well, actually I have to remind myself to drink water sometimes, and I can even find myself a little bit thirsty because you're having so much fun and you're talking to people. So yeah, I think electrolyte tablets are an absolute game changer for
Awesome.
performance.
And what about energy, maintaining energy then?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the type of riding that you're doing. So if you're out, you know, cranking pretty hard at like let's say you're a fit rider and you're able to put out quite a lot of watts for quite a long time, then you would bias most of your food intake towards high carbohydrate sources. So cereal bars, these are the kind of people who gels were invented for, and those like chewable blocks that you can get as well. So lots of carbohydrate based food. But if you're out riding at a slightly steadier pace, then you can have more mixed meals. So you can take a sandwich with you or something like that. It doesn't need to be as rapidly digested because you're not riding at such a high rate.
Cool. So at the end of your ride, you've completed 18 miles up and down hills, jumping, going for it. What would you recommend then for sort of recovery?
So that's a really good question as well. So there is this sort of myth of there being a sort of post-workout, post-ride recovery window, and the research recently has shown that really not to be the case. I do think that if you've finished a ride and you're feeling a little bit depleted, you maybe feel a little bit lightheaded, you're fantasizing about food, then that's a really good reason to get something inside you. So I recommend, you know, again, more carbohydrates. So I like a banana after a ride, a cereal bar, but also you want to get some protein in there as well. So I actually, in the summer, I'll have a cool box in my car and it will have some pre-made protein shakes or even chocolate milk. It's a perfectly good choice. It's got a complete protein in there, so it will start the repair and recovery process pretty quickly. But the main reason why I like to eat something right after a ride is because if I then have to jump in the car and drive somewhere, drive back home for instance, then I can get a bit hungry, and it means that I'm less likely to swing by the Golden Arches on the way home and have a massive splurge because I'm just so hungry. This way I can hold on, I can get home, I can have a balanced meal. I probably save a fortune as well by not having to, you know, buy ridiculously expensive rhymes with Kurger Bing at the M6 services. So yeah, by not having to buy a ridiculously expensive burger at the services, then I save a bit of money as well. So that's my strategy for kind of just keeping on top of things.
Absolutely blinding advice, really, really amazing. So thank you very much for all of that.
Cheers.
Right, that was absolutely awesome, Paul. Thank you very much for that. That was something that's going to help me massively, and I'm hoping that it's going to help you guys massively as well. So give it a go, get loose before and after you ride, and it'll make your next ride that much better. So cheers, Paul.
Thanks very much, Phil.
Cheers, buddy.